Hello and welcome to another episode of Clobbered with myself, Mark Webster, him, Mark Baxter.
Hello.
We require your services for subscribing for
free.
Absolutely nothing,
for free.
so that he and I can sit in a basement and talk about clothes forever. Well,
I'm at the end.
It's the last one of dry.
I've kept it going for a little longer than most people expect.
And I have nursed an airplane-sized bottle of wine for 2 episodes now. That's the kind of guy I am. We're going to go with icons, and it's because second time we've done this, but it's only because we've referenced them 99 times, and we will do 99 times more. The Duffer of St George.
Massive.
In my heart, fundamentally the most important. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go top of a tree of, say, Paul Smith, Vivienne Westwood. You know, the kind of the British labels that I know and grew up.
No
with.
argument from over here.
And they are so good and so special and so important, but kind of arguably forgotten about for that very reason.
Yeah.
Now, the Duffer of St George's story, and we'll kind of get round who the guys are and all that kind of stuff as we go along. But it starts in a world that you know very well, mid-80s, Camden Lock. Yeah. Now, I think people go down there now, they're going to see there's it's really popular, massive market,
very popular.
Slightly different in that 80s period when they started basically out of a suitcase.
When I first went down there in the late 70s, early 80s, it was literally horse stables. That's why it's called the Stables Market.
Yeah.
They were the remnants of the old stables were still there, and people were selling from within the stable. I think the Duffer story, if I remember rightly, they somehow got a shop doorway. Like, somehow managed to convince the old Bill.
Probably shut on a Sunday.
Yeah, but
it's available.
Outside a shop would still be a bit tricky, but they managed to get away with it. But that makes sense to me because the Camden that I started to sell from in that around the same sort of time was like the Wild West, really.
Really?
Yeah, if you could find the right market inspector, that's quite a high profile name for what they were. Give the geezer a drink, basically a drink. There's one over there. Off you go.
So it's not
particularly organised.
So it's not the military operation that clearly Camden has become nowadays.
For me, far better because of that.
Yeah,
because you've got an interesting mix of people. Every walks of life there. A load of different stuff being sold. Food, records, clothes. And I can see the Duffer boys fitting in very nicely in that.
So we need to reference them, which is Marco, Eddie and Barry.
Mm-hmm.
Barry Sharp, obviously, I'll stick that on the back end there because people are going to know his name as much as anything else from DJing and making his own music as well. Also, mentioned this as Cliff Bowen, who's the forgotten member of the whole thing.
Definitely.
But the joy of their starting point is 3 fellas from East London / Essex, kind of looking at each other across a crowded dance floor or record shop, arguably suspiciously. And I should point at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this up here. It's 10 years old now.
That's amazing.
And within this issue here, Jocks and Nerds magazine, which I used to be associate editor of, and in with this particular issue, the reason I mention it's a fantastic thing, wasn't it? It allowed you space to tell stories. And what I was allowed to do was interview the 3 instigators plus another guy we'll talk about in a minute, and just let them use their words. My florid prose are somewhat less. It's more about their descriptions of their time together. And the great thing about their world is they were just 3 blokes who dressed a bit differently, who went to soul and funk music and reggae clubs, who looked at each other and thought, we're a bit similar.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff they were wearing, as I can remember, I read that article at the time and recently, is like a lot of dead stock.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. I mean, for me, that's their joy of these guys. They were way ahead in finding and identifying brands, labels that most people have forgotten about or thought that was no longer in existence. They would then find a shop full of it, It's all about
and remove it.
It's basically curating. It's curating stuff.
Yes.
There's a load of stuff, a load of took you can be picking up, and these guys are going, no, we're going specifically for that, and that's what I picked up straight away because you started seeing old looks put together. You're thinking that doesn't really work, but it did work.
Yeah.
Like Gucci loafers in the mix with big E Levis, and it just a really really strong look.
Simple, but Barry Sharp within that piece says. It's kind of the opening line I use. I'm a designer. Sorry, I became one.
Yeah.
And Barry's a great case in point. He's just another one of the kids. He's come off the dance floor. Yeah. He's got his own look. Yeah. These boys are wearing second-hand clothes. Yeah. And the reason Duffer St George as a name comes along, because it comes from one of those old boys' own worlds. Yeah. Yeah. Because they were buying 40s, 50s looks. They were blazers and slacks. Yeah. On the dance floor in the early 80s. And so what they've done, and this is I'd say relatively unique, perhaps entirely unique, is in terms of who has ever translated that into a genuinely enormous business, which is what they did.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It got picked up, obviously a slow burn. From Camden, I think I went to Portobello, which I never got to. I mean, I remember reading about Portobello. Yeah. Never got there.
So 85, that's a good point. So, nor I. So, we're probably going to skip over that a little bit. Well, and there's going to be... Yeah, exactly. But, of course, what they've got there is they've got a shop at the bottom of Portobello Road in a world where second-hand and bric-a-brac and objet d'art is the big deal. And so they're going to have stuff in there which kind of fits that world, but in terms of clothes. And it sounds obvious now, but in 85 when they did it, it weren't. But the big deal was, and we mentioned Barry earlier there, Barry's then taken on a club called Cat and the Hat in the West End with Lascelles. Yep. And now you're in a world, now we've got this kind of perfect harmony of people, boys sourcing clothes, as you just said, and also a shop window, which is a club.
Someone to show it off, yeah. And that's what it always is. You start seeing, where's that from? I need to get one of those. And I like the mishmash idea. I'm a bit like that into this day. You take elements of certain styles and certain periods and certain decades and make your own look out of it. And I think they did that remarkably well. That's why I think I picked up personally on a lot of the stuff they did a little bit later. But the club, obviously having a club where you can parade a little bit when you're in your gears, and other people nodding and going, I'm having a bit of that. And it all just sort of works at around the same sort of time.
What I like about that as well is that wasn't a team of marketing gurus who did that. It's quite literally just some fellas together. Yeah. Doing a thing, and it started to happen.
They get good press very early on, didn't they?
They did.
Seeing them in newspapers
because everything was so different, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean,
they were quite clever at that.
I mean, simple examples like people mock at and chide at the idea of double denim.
Yeah.
These blokes were wearing vintage denim, vintage denim jackets and vintage denim jeans when no one else was wearing those things.
That's the thing about it. It's like they were, as I said earlier, they're picking up a dead stock, an old, in some ways old-fashioned sort of look, but then giving it a massive twist to be contemporary and brand new by just teaming it with other bits and pieces. And that is the skill of it, I think. But it's really hard. You either get it or you don't. And obviously, the way Duffer went, a lot of people got it, but it fitted perfectly with that sort of rare groove scene coming along, and the music and the look of it all, and it's all wrapped up in the time period.
They led from the front. 87.
Massively. They
moved to D'Arblay Street. Now, I did a record sleeve detail, sort of like record sleeve notes for an acid jazz compilation album.
Yeah.
And basically, I wrote, you go to D'Arblay Street, you go to Fish to get your hair cut, you go to Black Market to buy your records, and you go to Duffer to buy your clothes. And there was this kind of perfect triptych of style, culture, clubbing, all in one go. By the time they got there, this is when we know what it's all about, because this is bizarrely when you've got them, for example, the one off the top of my head I remember, they started copying polo shirts by putting big numbers on T-shirts.
Yeah.
Now, they've just basically gone to rich people's T-shirts and shoved big numbers on. it became a thing.
Massive thing. It became, that was what you just said there is perfectly. For me, it was Ray's Jazz Shop on a Saturday afternoon, so trying to discover the world of jazz. But you'd always also take in the Duffer shop without a doubt.
Yeah.
And then, haircut and books. And it was a Saturday afternoon, but it seemed like it lasts forever.
Yes.
I don't know why it did. But you seem to last forever. And then call someone and say, we're all going here tonight, we're going here tonight. You go home, drop your gear off, and you got your off out. It was like a network. Pre-mobile phone, really, pre-all that.
Yeah.
And it all started for me in that shop. You go to that shop with your wages, first of all. Try and hang on a little bit because I was spending an enormous amount of money. And but it just spoke to me.
That's probably a problem for another day. Yeah.
But it spoke to me, and it was a real destination. Soho on a Saturday when Millwall might have been away. It was a perfect opportunity to go and have a spender.
And where
they serviced that lovely.
And where they were great, I think, is there were two things. They were selling you stuff which you wanted to buy, but also allowing you to find your own look without having to buy anything out there. I'll give you a simple one. And this sounds weird, but no one was wearing crew neck sweatshirts with a T-shirt hanging out, obviously underneath it.
Yeah.
No one was wearing a sweatshirt with a T-shirt with another one knotted around the waist.
Yeah.
The biggest one, the zip-fronted hoodie sweatshirt that said Duff here and Fur there.
Yeah.
These things were amazingly impactful.
Yeah.
And not least of which, and then you add to that as well, really big names that they kind of salvaged. And it's not just, Americana kind of feels like that you want to say it's what their thing was, but also very much Italian.
Yeah.
But then, for example, John Smedley was a dead dog until they got hold of it.
And also, it wasn't everywhere. It was everywhere within a certain circle. It wasn't.
Yeah, but the look became adopted, didn't it?
Listen, it went gangbusters. But for a little while, it was just a thing that everyone would nod and go, "Oh we go there as well." It was one of them sort of things. You say about the numbers become omnipresent, didn't it?
Yeah,
it was everywhere, wasn't it? But at the time, you could only get this look at that shop. It was like the coach jacket with the big number on it, which Weller famously wore, and everybody wanted that coach jacket. But the only place you could get it was there. All right, later on, boom, it goes massive.
I mean, my favourite story ever, and I spoke to Marco Cairns, who's one of the three, only the other day up before you and I have been chatting about this here, and we'll talk about the legacy of it later on, but Duffer exists in its kind of purest state as a Japanese label called Duffer Nephews, which I don't know about these things. Can you go online and buy stuff from Japan? I don't know, but I know that
we struggle.
But I know that Marco is involved in still designing stuff which so much feels like their world.
Yeah.
But one of the great stories he ever told me is about the time they found Shelto Adidas, which is they'd been out shopping in New York. They were waiting for a taxi to turn up somewhere else. Someone's glimpsed a pair of shoes in the corner of a window and said, "Oh, they're the ones we're looking for." Give the knock at the door saying, "Have you got any more of these?" He said, "Well, there's a few." And there's like 300 downstairs in the basement. And there's 2 taxis later. They bought every pair for $3 a pair, and they all end up in the window in Darblay Street.
Fair play for them for getting out to New York in the first place.
Totally.
That's the thing about it.
They hunt.
They weren't messing about. A bit like John Simons back in the 60s. He went to the Empire State Building and dead stock shirts. They were doing it like they were doing the same thing, getting to the source, finding this stuff, but they would keep going till they found it. Then that's why I say we'd use the word curating. They bring it back and put it in the shop, and it fitted perfect.
They never stood still either, because again, Eddie Prendergast, obviously one of the great leaders of men on this one here, he said to me in that article, we went with Sheltos, puffers, and caps.
Yep.
I mean, they were the company that brought New Era caps to England. New Era is like one of the most obvious classic baseball cap labels in it. No one had heard of it until then. And then he said, we went Gucci Gabici. And they did. You could walk in the shop and all of a sudden, I think because they got a few more quid, was suddenly wearing Gucci loafers.
Yeah, I mean, the Gabici, the influence of the Gabici on what we come known as the Yardie Cardi. I mean,
which they also they did old Gabici, but then started designing their own ones, didn't they?
And the look was markedly different from the Gabici, but still had that little nod to the past.
Yes.
Again, bought far too many of those. Far too many. I've still got a few banging away in the Baxter archives because I can't let them go.
Yeah.
I can't get them on, but I can't let them go.
No.
Because it was just at that time you had, and I got old photos of me 10 stone ago, sporting that gear, and I love looking at it. The look of it was fantastic. You know,
well, a couple of kilometres ago, I waved my cherished number 7 Duffer of St George Barry Sheen tribute racing leather around, and your point is well made. Is that for me, if you're doing a V&A of Vivian Westwood, there should be a V&A of the Duffer. I think they've got, and one of my favourite quotes from Eddie that he told me about was how happy so he ended up in Shorts Gardens, and the looks changed a bit, so they're in Covent Garden. But Paul Smith came. Yeah. And Paul Smith was a hero in the sense where Paul Smith's another guy who basically just kind of invented something from the ground upwards.
Absolutely. I mean, his first shop was Saturday's Only at one stage. Yeah. When he first started, which is quite remarkable, thinking about the global empire it is now. But he started very, very small. But he would have been an inspiration, I'm sure. His story would have been inspiration to them. And obviously, Eddie's saying that. Obviously, that a big moment for him to come and give an endorsement. The
good news is, it's not gone away. First of all, it's not gone away in the sense where where Duffer is still a label that's out there. They kind of did a weird. They probably did a great thing. They kind of sold it on in constituent parts to various different places. We mentioned earlier that Marco, has got Duffer Japan going, and he's got extraordinarily talented offspring. If you can find it, his daughter Stroma, who's now a genuine film director, made a brilliant short about the Duffer about 10 years ago, and his boy Jack has done a lovely thing on Instagram, which you can see where you can get a kind of look at at what Duffer's up to now. The other versions of this are Kenneth McKenzie, who was kind of front of house at Darblay Street, with a shop and he invented a label which you struggle with.
Mangle, but it's 6876.
It is.
I've met Kenneth a few times. I never managed to say that properly.
Apparently, it's something to do with the Paris riots and the London.
If someone had told me that about 10 years ago,
it might not have sat down.
No, not easier.
But Ken came in later, younger boy, but he's the 6876, which is this beautiful kind of plain, simple, austere, but absolutely immaculately made and in limited numbers stuff. So he learned off of those guys, didn't he?
A lot of things spin off there, aren't you?
I'm going with Barry Sharp, who to this very day is still operating as Sharpeye. This is old. 30 years?
Wow.
Let me go logo. Sharpeye. And basically, you go online, you'll find Barry doing stuff.
Very active with it,
Barry's got a brilliant eye. Barry designs lovely stuff. And the reason I picked this out particularly is because what they were also very good at was knitwear. Yeah. And as I say, this is ancient, but Barry he loves a nice bit of cottony schmutter, and a massive fan of those as well. There's also the fact that Eddie's boy, whose name is Billy. So Present was a lovely little shop for a while, wasn't it, over in Shoreditch? That Eddie was running. And Billy worked in there for a while after he left college. And he started putting together a bunch of shoes, which were based on the fact that his dad had loads of lovely shoes. And if you can get, arguably I can't buy them online, but I do love the fact that, and it just kind of full circle. Yeah. He's set up in the Royal Exchange in Bank with a shop called Horatio. Just selling to a bunch of city boys and blokes from East London and Essex and just the crew. And I'll give you the phrase. This was something again in the article that I was told by one of the boys. He said, "It's fighty if it works. And do you feel like a geezer?" Yeah. That's what Marco said. Yeah. Is how they kind of conceive their look. And I don't think he's not being literal, but their clothes have always been very masculine.
Yeah. I mean, and Horatio, I know the brand, and I've seen the shoes close up, not knowing that heritage. But now you say it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
You're thinking who's making these? They obviously know their stuff. And then, obviously, you just told me that Eddie's boys involved, and that makes perfect sense.
So Duffer is out there.
Lives on.
Living the vida loca.
I've just got to say, before we wrap it up, the Savile Row years, very, very small.
Yes!
At the time. I was based around the corner in a place called Sackville Street, literally around the corner. And for a few, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, they had a shop, Duffer shop on Savile Row, which was extremely expensive. But again, I'm off to the flame.
And
I was buying shirts.
And if you got some stuff out of there and kept it,
I've got a tie.
You got a tie?
I've got a tie. I will get a photo.
I'm assuming that at this particular stage, we're seeing his magic Duffer tie.
You'll see my tie.
That's what we need to do.
Which is obviously, great choice.
That will sell it. So God bless Duffer. What a life, what a career. And it's not over yet. No. There are other chapters to come. New bits, Mr. Baxter.
I'm going to go ties in a little bit with this, actually. Adidas Italia trainers. Now, I'm famously known for not being a trainer man, really, but...
What the...
Up until...
Juice?
No, my last pair I would have worn on a regular basis. In fact, would have worn them out with a pair of Adidas Italia, green and white. Very soft, very comfortable. I knocked the what's names out because I wore them constantly. But I saw it again recently. It was on a website called Mod Culture. They've come round again, and not necessarily a new colourway.
So are they a kind of classic thin sole five-a-side shoe?
Very thin shoe, but they're very stylish. They were.
I've noticed kids wearing that style shoe with the big baggy trainers, which I thought was a bit weird because I thought you'd need a bit of chunky shoe with them, but they're not. They're wearing that thin sole shoe.
It's a very old school look. They were launched in 1960 at the Rome Olympics. That was the look of it. You can imagine what they looked like. You can imagine what they were wearing in the sportswear them days. And they've come around in various colours: red and white, blue and white, black and white, white and black. They're constantly coming around, but also do special versions. The good guys at Adidas who get older and do like limited editions and tie them in brands and stuff. But it's a look that's never gone away. It's a fantastic look, and I was pleased to see it again last couple.
I suspect that they absolutely are hitting the hot spot again.
They sell out remarkably quick.
Can't get hold of them. Yeah.
Once they're gone, and it's like, right, you've got to wait again for another colourway's coming.
Yeah. I'm going to go back a little bit further. I'm going to sort of 1820 sort of thing. But also, exactly, yeah, but also 40 years ago, because you'll know this face. I'm sure you'll know this face. This is Mr. Mark Powell, and he's holding up a pair of his own Mark Powell Albert Thurston braces. The trousers nowadays, they're asking for a brace.
Yeah.
These are the creme de la creme ones, aren't they?
I cut a pair of Albert Thurston. They're felts. Felts, sir.
And they've got the flap down the front, which means you're not apologising for them.
The leather end brace, called leather end brace.
Is that what it's called? Yeah.
And they go onto the buttons, and a little bit of felt flapping over the top of the trouser. It's quality, real quality, a bit of luxury really. And I've got a couple of pairs of them, and they don't really give a lot. But you've got to get the right size, and a bigger chap is tricky.
And they're yours for life. That's what Mark Powell's doing. There is his own signature version of it. And the reason we're saying this particular, because we are now in Mark Powell's 40th year.
That's incredible, isn't it?
In Soho. And keep your eye on Clobbered, because me and him and Mark Powell are going to be sitting down for a massive special conversation in the ensuing weeks. But for now, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I noticed you got, sorry.
I'm holding as well now.
There's now two.
Next time you see us, or keep an eye on social media, we're going to find a way to get these out there in some way, shape or form.
We already had a few inquiries already after the first.
Exactly right. So these do exist. Now we've got to find out how we can get them to people. But this, as you can see, because of the badges, was Clobbered.